So, hi everyone, welcome back to Ethics TV. It's Jonathan here, and my guest today is Deborah Webster. And I'm honored to have you on the show. Thank you so much, Deborah. I've been reading all about your fascinating journey and your incredible book, Better Than Your Behaviour, which I think is more needed now than at any time in human history. But thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me. Awesome to be here.
So, where do we start? I've got this. I would like to know when did it happen? Was there a moment when it happened, with it being this kind of realization that you know what the issue might be? It may well be that we've somehow dehumaned ourselves inside business and technology, and by doing so we've kind of lost the thing that makes the magic happen. And then also these new tools and technologies could actually be used to actually find our more human purpose back again. So when was that? I imagine that there was a story leading to that realization. Take it away.
Oh my Lord. Once upon a time in a faraway land. So first of all, I think it's important to state that I was raised by two very principled parents who instilled this notion of character within us. And that's very much led and directed my life and how you discern right from wrong, navigating the shades of gray. My mom was a particular powerhouse in that regard. And there's always kind of, like when there's something in you, but you haven't quite put your finger on it. And so the business as a force for good hit me. So I used to be a partner with Korn Ferry. So I used to interview people all the time. And I created this model. It was about people of character building companies of principles, but I hadn't quite yet articulated it yet. There's too many yets in that, but anyway. So in the middle of a financial crisis, someone sent me a link to water poverty. And it wasn't about a child dying every 15 seconds. It was a water privatization deal that took place in South America. And the tariffs that were set were too high for the poor members of the community to afford. And I looked into the company behind the transaction. It's very highly regarded, one of the world's leading ones. Pretty website, lovely mission, lovely values, CSR. And I was like, well, how can you have CSR when your business practices cause harm? And it was that question that led me onto this path of really articulating business and people as a force for good. And then it translated into technology because I was working with low-tech phones to solve water poverty in sub-Saharan Africa. And I had interactions, like I had dealings with mobile phones before, and and I didn't realize I was navigating the ethics of data collection. But and then I was writing a book. It was pre-COVID. It's funny now, isn't it? How it's kind of like AD, BC, and now it's pre-COVID and post-COVID. I was writing a book called Humanity Rising, and it's how humans stay relevant in a technology-obsessed world. And I woke up one morning at about 4 o'clock because there was all this doom and gloom about if AI were to gain consciousness, would overrule humans. And I came up with this other scenario. It's like, wow, well, if AI were to gain consciousness, it could potentially be kinder to humans than humans are to humans. And when you look at the world around us, it's actually not a very high bar, unfortunately, sadly. And I don't want to say that. And then that leads me on to the title of the book, which is Better Than Your Behaviour, which is inspired by something my mom used to say to me, which was, when I criticize you, it's not you I criticize, but your behavior, because you're better than your behavior. And for me, it's people on our behavior and humanity and our potential. And it's this nudge that we have to consider. And when you look at all the, the algorithms that we're training and the AI that we're building, we're training it on our behavior, which is people. But we need to kind of think about, well, how do we kind of do the humanity piece? So I work a lot in that space, about that beautiful nudge space, but always maintaining the human to be completely conscientious of their decisions, and being at the controls, so to speak.
So. And so the human condition of greed, dominion, um, selfish control seems to be at odds with the striving for potential that we have. And I find it very, very present when I'm inside specifically pale male and stale dominated companies that are that think that people who speak about ethics are either soft or hippies or idealists or dreamers, or and there seems to be this dichotomy between what seems to be blindingly obvious to you and I and the last, to be honest, last 11 or 12 people that I've spoken to on Ethics TV since its foundation, but it seems to be very hard to reconcile with the shareholder value number go up, 55% market share, to hell with what we're doing in the background. How have you found that battle or that challenge, let's say, to deal with?
Oh my Lord. So it's really, really fascinating how, I mean, I was on a panel last week and there was this guy who was kind of making out that ethics stymies or hinders innovation. And the two are actually intertwined because the
Ooh,
cool thing, I mean, if you navigate ethics properly, it's really what unlocks human genius. And
totally.
we've got to get on that side of the equation. You know, I mean, we have forgotten the original seed of business. The original seed of business was you solve a problem and you add value, and that's how you make money. And
Mm,
I mean, I studied psychology and business, so I have been trying to untangle and really get to the heart of how do we optimize humans and get the best out of humans, right? And so I like to look at, for instance, the virtues and the vices. Profit is good, right? I'm not talking about, you know, when I was working in water poverty, I remember my brother saying to me, he said, Deb, whether you're chopping trees or hugging trees, investors want a return. He's absolutely right, right? We've got to be very cognizant of what we're measuring. And at the end of the day, if you're going to buy something, gratitude and thank you is not a currency. So money matters, making things that are financially sustainable matters, but in an equitable way. There's no point in, you know, having a tiny, tiny percentage of the planet having the majority of the resources, while the rest are suffering. That doesn't seem very, very smart.
mm,
And I also kind of push back on, you know, humans being the most intelligent species on the planet. I think we have the potential of being the most intelligent species on the planet, but I don't think it's massively intelligent of us to poison the very, very resources that we need to actually survive, be that
mm,
water and air. So, you know, if we look at ESG, for instance, because I like to look at, so humans do not like change and they will find any excuse to maintain the status quo. But we actually have a lot of laws today in place that if we look at them in a different way and deploy them in a smart way, it actually brings out our best. So for instance, if you're extracting something from planet Earth to add value to your company, isn't there an argument, therefore, that Earth is a shareholder? When
mm,
you look at humans living on this planet, we're kind of behaving like squatters. You know, it's like, it's fascinating. So imagine if there were to be a lease agreement with planet Earth. What would those terms be? And I do a lot of these thought experiments with people in order to get them kind of to look at the world through a different lens and to really tap into their innovative brain. But ESG for me is a really fascinating space because if you look at people and you listen to them, when you mention ESG, most people default think E first, which is for me
mm,
nuts, right? You actually need to start with G, which is upgrading your thinking, your decision making, your level of responsibility and accountability. And it also actually brings in the ethics and the moral and the moral component. And there are lots of different lenses that we need to apply when it comes to ethics, but I think we need to recalibrate and re-educate ourselves. And it fascinates me how, technology is constantly upgrading, but we haven't really upgraded how we think and how we operate. And so this gap is fascinating. But talk about shareholder value and balance sheets. I mean, whether it's on your balance sheet or not, it is on someone's balance sheet somewhere. So let's just say, for instance, a company in the UK that can that's polluting water or polluting the air. It might make your balance sheet look good, but it is, it's going to impact people's health, and therefore it's on the balance sheet of the NHS, and ergo then it's on the balance sheet of the taxpayer. So somewhere, like somehow, it's got to be accounted for somewhere. So I think that we just need to become more accountable and more responsible.
I couldn't agree more. The Earth as a shareholder and other blog posts that are linked to on your website, to your LinkedIn blogs are great, by the way. So that one specifically is one of my faves. There's quite a few. For people watching, in the description, you can see a link to Deborah's site, deborahwebster.net, but also the links to the posts as well, some of which you've referred to very subtly and non-promotionally. So I thought I'd do the promo part. I thought that the simplicity of the solutioning of taking a more holistic view and realizing that there is somewhere there is a checks and balances kind of around a holistic checks and balances. So you can do X, Y, and Z in your carbon mines to make lithium, to make the batteries for the phones, but the fact that those carbon mines are actually poisoning the women and children that are put down there has an actual impact. Not least the fact that you are eroding a potential buying public for the very thing that you're trying to sell. So even if you looked at it from a cynical perspective, the reduction in the population through poisoning them is empirically going to lessen the volume of people that can buy your product. So if we look at it in a really cynical way. So what have you found is the most persuasive argument technique to get across this holistic checks and balances point? Have you found a technique that has been more effective than others?
Value matters, right? I'll give you an example. So first of all, I think it's about having the courage to say it as it is. A lot of my clients say, we love working with you because your face is so expressive. We can tell there's something you need to tell us that we don't want to hear. And so then they say, it's like, there's something you need to tell us. Like, It's like, we're not going to like it. Like, no. But then they actually kind of subtly give me permission to tell them. So that's already kind of opening the doorway. You can't sell this to someone. You can't convince someone of this. So you really need to choose your battles very wisely. And it's about gaining traction and creating momentum and good cases. I mean, I have had the privilege of working with some phenomenal people and some phenomenal organizations in spheres that people would normally think was harm. So some of the most inspiring clients I've had are actually huge financial institutions. But the magic of them is their mission, what their mandate is, and the people that they have on board that are people of character. So I created this equation. So I love models in order to help people kind of navigate things. So there are particular criteria that I look for in companies. There's particular criteria I look for in people. So a lot of people are focused purely on competence, but this isn't the magic, right? Magic is people of competence, character, commitment. There's nuances. And so I look at systems of how we bring people on board. And so, for instance, something simple like an interview is also fundamentally flawed, because a lot of people feel that they're being judged by a company. They've got to go through hoops. So they've got to answer questions in a particular way. So you could have someone who's really, really, really of moral character, but the systems kind of corrupt them.
Mm.
How performance bonuses are paid out. There's no point in a company saying, this is what we stand for. These are like the values that we have, if you are rewarding these. So it's about
Mm-hmm.
having the courage to point things out as they are and coming up with solutions, right?
Mm.
And there are so many solutions out there. It's mind-blowing.
Mm.
But we must do better. We have to want to not just checkbox exercises, but really build things that are brilliant. And as I say this, the motto of the founder of the Lego family comes to mind, which was only the best will do.
Mm.
I love that, you know?
The Lego. I'd once arrived in Denmark, very very late at night, 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, and arrived at the Lego head office, and there was about 500 people, mostly naked, dancing on tables with this really loud EDM music, huge electronic dance music pumping out, and people wearing weird face masks, spraying each other with body paint, and um and what I realized from the Lego team, it was me and a guy called Peter Vesterbacker, one of the creators of Angry Birds. Me and him were the two facilitators for the next couple of days. And what I realized about Lego is that no one enjoys themselves more than the Lego team on a daily basis. Everything they create, they absolutely love it. You couldn't fire them. If you said to someone at Lego, we can no longer pay you, sorry, they'd still work there. Um, and but the thing is that their product is fundamentally unsustainable, or was fundamentally unsustainable. So what my point to them was that of all of the people in the world who should be looking deeply into the renewable side of sustainability, the company who's deeply invested into plastics would be one of those people, right? In the same way as Heineken, I said the thing that you need to create is a non-alcoholic beer. That's what you need to create. We've got enough alcoholic beers out there. What you need to create is something that tastes as good, but you can still drive after it. That's what you need to be doing. And I think Lego and IKEA and Heineken have understood their position in this. IKEA being the world's largest printer, actually, the IKEA catalog, I think, was distributed 500 million times a year. And they realized they had to do something. From your experience in the case studies in the book, in Better Than Your Behaviour book, do you feel that there is a case study that you find, if it wasn't true, most people wouldn't believe it to be true? Is there a case study that is your mic drop moment, that is your closest to your heart?
Oh my Lord. It's, gosh. I mean, I remember when an investor asked me to look into one particular company. So I was building this model, right? And it was still in test mode. And he asked me to check out a particular company had been asked to invest in. And it was, splashed all over the media, amazing company, amazing founder, first female founder, billionaire, blah, 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 blah. Because, the spin machine does not help, right? And so so when I did my due diligence through the model and I came up with, it's a no-go, I was like, oh my dear God. It's like, how is this like? And it was 18 months before Theranos kind of imploded. So coming up with predictions when everyone else is gung-ho, I'm kind of now used to, so much so that, my husband kind of now has this habit of, I'd be talking about something, I'd predict something, and 2, 3 years later, he'll give me a newspaper clipping. He's like, you mentioned this, it's actually you start kind of keeping a log, but you can't keep a log. And I can't tell people really how the model works, because then the bad actors are more likely to hack it. So it's a fascinating space, but it's what I have found is you'd be looking at something and you kind of look at it sideways. It's like, does no one else see that? It's kind of like this, because you can kind of see the puppet strings and the mirage and not being hoodwinked. I mean, it's petrifying space, huh? Absolutely petrifying space. But there's one really inspiring story. There's a board member. So I've done a lot of work with one particular company, and I was an advisor to other board members. And he seemed troubled one time, and I was like, what's happening? He's like, so there were a telecoms company in sub-Saharan Africa, and they were really, really good at hiring local talent and growing them so they became very senior in the organization. And he's like, I don't know what to do, because we've caught this guy taking money out of the company, paying it back before the next accounting cycle. What should I do? And I was like, huh, interesting. And he expected me to say, fire him. He's like, what do you mean interesting? And it's like, well, I've got a hunch that you've been so good at building trust in the local community that the more senior local talent is, the more of a modern day elder expectation they have from their community. So we need to find out what the money was being used for. And because I had a feeling it was for school books or uniforms or something like that. And it was something of that nature. And it turned out that lots of other people were being put into that situation. So what they did was they created a CSR fund that they could borrow against. They had to log what it was against, and then they paid it back. Then the product development people got involved, and they created a product, and they've made millions of this. So it's what could be a potential negative can actually can become an amazing opportunity. And what I love about that story is, instead of judging, we seek to understand. And it's about engaging curiosity and really understanding kind of, okay, well, how can we solve for that? Because sometimes, you know how we say the path to hell is paved with good intentions. And sometimes we set things in motion that put people in a situation where they can be corrupted. They're not corrupt individuals, but we're creating circumstances where we're putting their back against the wall. So one of the suggestions I would give to people who are watching this and listening to this is review the practices you have in place and make sure that you're not creating something that could potentially put someone in a situation where they have to do something that they wouldn't be proud of. You know, at the end of the day, we're all humans that need to look at ourselves in the mirror and be proud of who we're becoming and our actions. You know, is my behavior something I'd be proud to tell my kid about or my nephew about or what have you? And it's, and can I look at myself in the mirror and be okay with that? It doesn't mean justify ourselves and sell ourselves stories, because we're really good at that as well, right?
Yeah, we are indeed. Yeah, we can post-rationalize things quite easily. There's so many more things that we can speak about. I think there'll be other phone calls there'll be other videos about this. Some of the guests are repeat guests, specifically when there's obviously many more parts of the rabbit hole to go down. I mean, in and of itself, the difference between box ticking exercises as regulation versus an inward entrepreneurialism to understand one's truest purpose, that whole thing, it has its own conversation. So would you agree to do a follow-up ethics TV chat at some stage?
Absolutely, would love so. Love to. And so if anyone listening to this wants to post comments or questions as to what they want us to cover, because the space is vast, right? But we're all, other than the psychopaths at work, of which if anyone who's interested in that space, I highly recommend a book called Snakes in Suits, When Psychopaths Go to Work. The majority of people are really, really good people trying to do their best. And so we could use this platform to enable more people to get onto the right side of change. It would be an absolute honor and a privilege. And thank you.
Awesome. Well, in which case, I'm going to add to that book recommendation Toxic Cultures and Psychopathic Empires, which sounds to be not dissimilar. So, okay, so yeah, let's field some questions. Let's field the direction of the rabbit hole journey through the comments, and I shall see you on the next one. Thank you, Deborah.
Amazing. Thank you so much.